Christ. Could Bethesda get any more cringe right now? Look at these reviews. Oh, that's so good. Yeah. Shattered Space's Metacritic. Now, look, I'm not as much into feeding into critic reviews as I am the user ratings, right? So 5.5. Mostly negative of almost 2,400 reviews now. Yeah. So let me just let's start this out here. We already kind of knew that Shattered Space had been reviewing poorly, right? Starfield has never been meeting the expectations of what most gamers had been told that that game was going to be coming from Bethesda, right? It's not that everybody hated it necessarily, but it definitely, I think most people that were realistic about what that experience was going to be were fine with it. There were a lot of other people that got caught up in the hype of what they were told Starfield was going to be from Bethesda, and they were a bit baited into thinking it was going to be more than it really was. Those are the people that got really disappointed, I think, in what Starfield is. And honestly, I haven't played it, but the general idea of what I have come to believe that Starfield is really just Fallout in space. A very barren space at that. Yeah. Again, some people are okay with it. Some people are not, right? And I understand both sides of it. I think that when you talk about Starfield, I've always expressed this sentiment. I understand that Bethesda was like, oh, well, we want to make it a realistic space exploration sim for what we know about, you know, what space is and how 9 out of 10 planets aren't necessarily going to have anything on them. And you also have to understand, I think, that, you know, in this business, you're catering to a consumer that needs to be engaged, right? And if your consumer's not engaged in fun activities during, you know, gameplay, then it's gonna feel quite boring, right? So I feel like they probably had quite a bit of you know, oversight on that fact of, you know, what their aim was as opposed to what it should have been potentially, right? Now, getting into this, Davey, give me just a bit. After I talk about this, I'll address that. Cool. Bethesda is insisting that Starfield is the best game they've ever made. I would disagree with that notion. Starfield's design director, Emil Pagliarulo, is positive that Bethesda has never made a better game than Starfield, forgetting about Skyrim. And whenever I first found this article, that's what I said. I was like, you know, for me personally, like the Morrowind was like, oh my God, Bethesda, you know, incredible. Morrowind, and then all the way through Skyrim, and, you know, that entire time period of what they were doing there was just, you know, a lot of people are going to go, well, what about Fallout New Vegas? There's a little bit of caveat there. Fallout New Vegas wasn't necessarily developed by them. It was developed by Obsidian, right? So it's a bit of a gray area about how you want to address what Fallout New Vegas is. Yeah, it was built on Bethesda's engine, but it wasn't developed by them. It was published by them, developed by Obsidian, right? So, still, banger game nonetheless. I mean, most people consider Fallout New Vegas to be the greatest Fallout game to ever have been made, so I'm not discounting that, and it is a Bethesda game, right? But there's things to talk about there on that front, too. When it comes down to it, I mean, if you're going to have Bethesda come out trying to say that Starfield's the best game they've ever made, I would disagree. I think most people would disagree. A lot of people are probably going to default to Skyrim. most people are probably going to default to Skyrim. A lot of it depends on if you're a, Elder Scrolls fan versus a Fallout fan for the most part, and some of it's going to have to do with nostalgia. And so like again, Morrowind was something for me that was incredibly mind-blowing. I played Morrowind and was just absolutely blown away by what I was experiencing, So while Skyrim was incredible, Morrowind was really something that was absolutely unforgettable for me and was one of those things. But, to say that Starfield's the best thing they've ever made, whenever it was that time period back then, I think really put them on the map for what they have become known for doing, is a weird notion by them. I'm not, maybe they're looking at this as like it's the best game we've ever made because, obviously things have progressed a lot with technology and game development and stuff, and they see it as, it's the best game they've made because of that fact. But in a lot of different factors being considered, I would not think that most people are going to consider Starfield is going to be forgettable. Let's chalk it up to that. Starfield is going to be forgotten as anything from Bethesda worth remembering in regards to I guess, what has been good about them. When people look at Bethesda, even 10 years down, a decade down the road, if people go Bethesda, are you going to think about Starfield? No. Absolutely not. People aren't going to think about Starfield. When people look back at Bethesda, even 10 years down the road, what are they going to think about? Skyrim, Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, you know what I mean? There are some other ones in there too, but it's not going to be Starfield. If anything, they're going to look at Starfield as a very controversial thing for them in regards to not necessarily fulfilling what they promised people in regards to what that experience was going to be. A lot of people felt let down by it. And if anything, that's what's going to be remembered by a lot of people about what Starfield is. Again, some people are okay with what Starfield is, but it's not going down in the annals of Bethesda history as their triumphant, long-lasting, made us kind of game. Best game they've ever done. No. I wholly disagree. And then you look at things like, they've been trying to hype up Shattered Space. We can't, in good conscience, talk right now about Starfield and them talking about it's the best game we've ever made whenever they're coming out with a DLC, or they came out with a DLC, Shattered Space. And really, they were trying to build hype around it. But did anybody feel it? I didn't. It didn't ever seem like it was anything besides, hey, they're adding a rover to the game so you don't have to walk across blank planets anymore. You can drive across them. You know what I mean? And, here's your reviews. Again, I'm not going to feed into a whole lot of critic reviews, but that's something that I'm quite averse to anymore in large part. But user ratings are definitely something for me. We always have to take into consideration of, where review bombing might be happening and stuff. But I don't think this is going to be really, far off, to be honest with you. 5.5 here, 448 user ratings on the Xbox right now. And then you go look at Steam. Steam's got almost 2,400 reviews at mostly negative. That's a 30% positive. That's 70% negative. 70% of these reviews are negative for Shattered Space. This is their best game ever? This is their best game ever? Come on, man. I'm really starting to get the impression that Bethesda is not the company that a lot of people fell in love with once upon a time. I really hope that Elder Scrolls 6 is good because people deserve it. But, how many times have we seen these big, massive companies forget what it means to make the good content anymore? It's like they get so big, they get so polluted with non-gamers, it seems like, that they just fall apart with what it means to continue to create what made them so iconic in the first place. Is Bethesda hitting that point right now? In some aspects, it almost feels that way. And look, I'm not saying that, you know, they shouldn't have tried Starfield. They shouldn't have tried to do something different. Different's not bad. Different, I think, is good sometimes. It shows that a developer can step outside their box and do something. But honestly, was Starfield different? It's not like we're talking about Tango going from making like The Evil Within and Ghostwire Tokyo games to doing something like Hi-Fi Rush, which was entirely different, and they killed it. They nailed it. We're talking about Bethesda acting like they were doing something different when really it just seems more like a Fallout game, you know, themed in space in large part. You know, it wasn't a lot of differing in what they're creating, to be honest. It doesn't feel like. So let's read this real quick. More than a year has passed since the launch of Starfield, but now that the first expansion, Shattered Space, is released, the title is once again rigorously topical. Bethesda's space work has been one of the most divisive for the company, although the studio continues working on improvements and updates. Its design director, Emil Pagliarulo, has defended the merits of this ambitious production in an interview with Games Radar. The creative acknowledged that not everyone liked it, but his opinion about the game is overwhelming. Fans really, really, really want Elder Scrolls 6, he joked. I think in a lot of ways, Starfield is the hardest thing Bethesda has ever done. Pagliarulo, said, we pushed ourselves to make something totally different, to just jam into an Xbox the biggest, richest space simulation RPG anyone could imagine. We pulled it off. That we pulled it off makes Starfield something of a technical marvel. It also, in a lot of ways, the best game we've ever made. But for us, most importantly, Starfield has its own unique personality and now sits right next to Fallout and Elder Scrolls. No, it does not. Nope. Absolutely not. Controversy with Starfield began very early, just when it was released in early access, both of the press and among the public. A debate has been generated around the quality of the video game. While the average score from reviewers is 83 out of 10, that's something. I would say that's probably 8.3 out of 10 or 83 out of 100. That of players drops to, this is always the problem. This is from critic reviewers. It was an 8.3 out of 10, guys. This is always my concern with critic reviewers. How many of them are sold out, you know? How many of them are being bought? Whenever the players, us, the people, you know what I mean? Us, actually have reviewed this game as a whole as a 6.8 out of 100. That is quite a stark contrast. If you're talking about a game being an 83 out of 100, that is quite a memorable game. This is a very, very, very good score, right? I mean, you're talking about something that is going to be probably, you know, a mid-80s score is something that is not a lot of games hit that in a year time frame, meaning that it's going to go down as something that has probably included some quite inventive gameplay. It'll be a game that people are very interested in replaying. It's got something about it that just is so engaging and memorable that it will continue to be remembered in video gaming for years and years and years, if not forever, you know what I mean, down the line. As opposed to a 6.8 or a 68 out of 100. A 6.8 out of 10 or a 68 out of 100, which is actually quite forgettable. You know, that is a big, big difference. A 68 out of 100 is a game that is probably going to be for some people that are interested in the genre, the setting, what the game has to offer. If you're really interested in it, it's probably going to be worth a play if you don't have anything else to play. It'll probably be entertaining enough if you don't have anything else lined up. You know, but it's going to be quite a niche kind of thing for people. If you don't have anything on the agenda at the current time, and it seems like it might be interesting, you'll probably get enough entertainment out of it to, have some fun. But it's not going to be anything that you go back to and be like, I want to keep playing that. I want to get in a whole nother run going, another playthrough, or, you're going to remember it necessarily. It's just something that's going to be more like, a one-time experience. You're not going to really necessarily look back at it or anything like that. This is quite a difference. And this is the problem that we see quite often nowadays with critic reviews as opposed to player reviews. And again, there's always something to take into consideration here with maybe if there was review bombing that happened and stuff like that. But dude, I don't really think that was a whole lot of. Now, the one thing that did affect potentially in the long run this game was some of the mod stuff, because Bethesda didn't want to allow people to mod the game. They were setting up their own shop for modding and stuff like that, and it was really a turn off for people. But honestly, the game was so bad that a lot of the major Bethesda mod creators actually came out and were like, we don't even care to mod this game. It's so bad. We'll just go back and mod the games that we enjoy. So I don't think that affected this greatly, to be honest with you. But this is always a concern. When you have a game that's being rated this high by critics and the player base, us as consumers, are rating it that much lower, how many of these reviewers actually got bought? So, again, this is quite a this is a concern whenever, especially, Bethesda can't even admit that, they probably didn't do great with Starfield. They're still trying to be like, this is the best game we've ever made, boys. It just works, I guess, Yikers.